Imagine the universe sitting on a sheet of paper. Everything rests on a flat plane, the more massive celestial bodies sinking further into the firmament as their gravity warps reality to their whims. Earth, a minuscule depression drawing meteors and space junk towards it. Jupiter, a slightly deeper dip and a greater pull. The Sun, even more so, and enough that it carries an organized system of lesser bodies, planets, and comets in its orbit. And a black hole, so massive, so influential, it punches straight through the fabric of space and time, so great that not even the speediest thing in existence can escape its attraction. Charlie was reminded of this lesson from his AP Physics class as he sat in the Lawndale High School cafeteria, idly watching the flow of his fellow students circulate around the table at the center of it all. Around the popular kids, around his twin sister, Ryan. Beautiful, outgoing, adored by her teachers, admired by her classmates. She was everything Charlie wasn't, a point he reflected on all alone from his spot in the corner of the lunchroom reserved for the outcasts and losers. He didn't resent his sister for their difference in social status. It wasn't her fault that their shared diminutive stature, slim build, and soft, delicate features were what made every guy in school want to date her and every bully in school want to stuff him into a locker. No resentment, but if he was going to be a target, Charlie decided a long time ago it would be best to try to not draw attention to himself. Practiced at being inconspicuous, his usual drab wardrobe of baggy clothes and a baseball cap pulled low unwittingly made him stick out more for his dullness when compared to the supernova that was Ryan. Charlie's saving grace not so ironically was that nobody dared to harass him for fear they would ruin their chances with her. That abuse was instead directed at all the other kids unlucky enough to wind up in the crosshairs of the privileged popular cliques. Football players or kids whose parents had money or anybody who felt justified in taking their anger out on somebody who was perceived to be lower than them. That, more than any of Einstein's theories, was the immutable law of high school: get in the way of your social better and you better be prepared for pain. The crash of molded plastic clattering off linoleum halted the carefully coordinated dance of students traveling from their tables to the lunch line and back. Charlie's eyes, along with everybody else's, were drawn to find out which unfortunate soul was going to be that day's main character. "Oh no," Charlie muttered under his breath. "Nice going, puke stain." The taunt came from one of the innermost tables, but the laughter and catcalls soon joined in from all sides. "Puke stain. Puke stain. Puke stain." Paul Swain kept his head down, scrambling to rescue whatever could be salvaged of his scattered meal. He got back to his feet and shuffled awkwardly to his one island of safety. Deep in the corner of the lunchroom, as far from the mocking chant as he could get without running out into the hallway, he set his tray down purposely this time, next to his best friend, Charlie. "It's not even a good insult," Paul grumbled as he sat down. "Barely rhymes." Charlie failed to hide the pity in his eyes as he struggled to come up with some way to console his friend, settling on a weak, "Yeah, I know, right?" If Charlie was a perfect target for bullies, Paul was the diagram they'd put in manuals for who to pick on. Pudgy, terminally cowlicked hair, thick glasses, and clothes that no matter where they came from just never seemed to fit him right. The two met in the 5th grade, placed into the gifted program. Their removal from the student body at large only cemented their otherness. Their shared love of robotics projects and impenetrably dense sci-fi epics guaranteed their lifelong friendship. "Did you see who tripped me?" Paul asked. Charlie shrugged. He had missed anything that had led up to the fall. "Fucking Gavin Keane," he sneered, answering his own question. "Dumb jock cut me in line too." "Are you sure?" "I mean, maybe you slipped." "Really?" Paul gave an annoyed grunt. "Look at him, Charlie. He's over there laughing about it now." Sure enough, all the guys at Gavin's table were practically in conniptions, with Gavin flailing his arms and legs in a mock gesture of somebody stumbling and falling. Charlie felt his jaw clench. Paul had been minding his own business, but there would always be an asshole like Gavin who would still mess with kids like him anyway. Yeah, I know. The pair sat quietly, each picking at their lunches. The silence getting the better of him, Charlie reached over and snatched a tater tot off of Paul's tray, nimbly escaping with his prize before the rightful owner could spear him with a plastic fork. Come on, I already lost like half of my tots on the floor, Paul whined. But you didn't lose all of them, Charlie nudged his sullen friend. And that's what's important, right? He tried with a hopeful smile. Screw you and your after-school special BS, Paul rolled his eyes before cracking a smile of his own. Hey dude, did you see who's going to play the new captain? But Charlie had stopped listening, his attention drawn back to Gavin. The cocky jerk had finished his pantomime and was sauntering towards the center of the cafeteria. The purposeful stride told Charlie his destination instantly. Charlie's eyes searched for his sister, not needing long to find her in her usual spot, encircled by a group of loudly chattering teen girls. Disquiet rippled along Gavin's path until he reached Ryan's seat. All of the girls suddenly stopped mid-conversation, seemingly holding their breath in unison. Gavin's confident swagger faltered for the first time that day, suddenly bashful, the distance between him and Charlie muffled whatever he was saying to Ryan. Judging only by his body language, Charlie watched as his friend's bully seemed to be stammering something. Ryan, for her part, smiled sweetly, her usual welcoming posture that could put anybody at ease. Gavin ran a hand over his close-cropped hair, nervously scratching at the spot where the collar of his shirt rubbed against the back of his neck. A quick back and forth before he wound up for the big question. Watching Ryan, Charlie saw the flicker of her smile drop for just a second, and while he couldn't hear her, he could easily see her mouth the words, "Meet me behind the gym." That seemed to be a good enough answer for the nervous boy as the tension seemed to melt from him instantly. Gavin nodded to Ryan, but her eyes had instead found her brother's, a hard look and purposeful frown sent his way from across the room. And then, like a switch was flipped, she was back to being all smiles and sunshine towards Gavin. Finished with what he came to do, he practically skipped back to his table while all the girls around Ryan erupted into excited squeals. And it looks like they're setting up Corix and the Raven Guard to be the bad guys in the next, Charlie? Hey, Charlie. Realizing he had been mostly talking to himself the past few minutes, Paul followed what had taken his friend's attention. Oh, figures, his mood soured. The asshole's gonna ask your sister out. Girls always go for jerks like him. She's not that shallow, Charlie defended his sister. And besides, I know getting asked out all the time really sucks for her. Oh yeah, sure, how hard it must be that every guy in school throws himself at her all the time. Must really suck to be so hot. Dude, come on, Charlie bristled at the remark on his sister's attractiveness. Even if he knew it was objectively true, it was always weird to hear other guys say it, especially when it was coming from his best friend. Really, it kills her to have to turn these guys down. She's always been like that. Like, when we were in first grade, she got invited to 2 birthday parties that were on the same day. She cried for like the whole week before the party because she thought that whichever kid's party she skipped would hate her forever. Alright, sorry, but that's not a bad problem to have. Being too popular. Charlie sighed. I'm only telling you this because you're you, but she was so desperate before those birthday parties that she tried to convince me to dress up like her and go to one of the parties and she would go to the other. Paul looked at Charlie with a cocked eyebrow, a beat passing before he burst into laughter. Oh my god, dude. That would have been so funny. Like, I know you're twins, but, no offense, you're not nearly as cute as your sister. Charlie let out a wry chuckle of his own just as the bell rang to end the lunch period. Kids all around them hurried to gather up their things and toss out any trash. Yeah, thank God our parents talked her out of it. He got up from his seat, hoisting his backpack onto his shoulder while Paul went to drop his tray off at the wash station. As Charlie waited for his friend, he shot one last look over towards his sister. His beautiful, popular sister at the center of the lunchroom universe. Surrounded by other pretty girls, trailed by the boys who wanted to be close to the pretty girls, casting off tales of other kids who waited for the crush of people to make their way into the hallway so they could leave for their next classes. Ryan couldn't help it if she wanted, no more than the sun could repel the planets, or the earth could set loose the moon. And because of that, Charlie was once again going to be his sister's anti-gravity. The hallway outside the science labs had cleared out for the day. At the far end of the old building and without any lockers down that way, that part of the school was deserted by the time the late bell rang to indicate that the afternoon buses would be pulling out. Checking over his shoulder, then up and back down the corridor, Charlie made absolutely sure nobody saw him as he placed his palm flat on the heavy wood door to the girls' bathroom and pushed it open. He scanned the interior, one last check that the room was empty. It was mostly unremarkable pink and cream tile in place of the boys' blue and white, extra stalls where he was used to seeing urinals, but then again, being in the opposite gender's bathroom had become unremarkable in its own right to Charlie. "You're late," the usually bubbly, currently perturbed voice of his sister startled him as she came out of what he thought was an unoccupied stall. "Geez, Rye, I had a test last period. I couldn't exactly skip out early. Besides, you know the plan is to wait for everybody to leave first." The plan. A harebrained scheme cooked up by a 6-year-old and then revisited and refined years later by a couple of teenagers too clever for their own good. One sibling couldn't hurt anybody's feelings, the other wanted nothing more than to see the smug bullies taken down a peg. "No, you're right, but Gavin's got to get to practice and he's not gonna wait around forever." Ryan's tone softened, but it still betrayed a hint of anxiety. "If we don't get this done today, then I know he's going to want a straight answer tomorrow in class." "I don't know why you care so much about these jerks' feelings," Charlie scoffed. "He's not so bad," was her weary response. The pair had done this dance plenty of times before. "He works really hard, you know. 2 days, going to tutoring and practice on the weekends all so he can stay eligible for the team. He's really good at making pinch pots in ceramics class, too." Where Ryan was willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, Charlie only saw their faults. "He tripped Paul today." "When?" She seemed genuinely unaware. "At lunch." "You were probably too busy to notice," Charlie answered with a harder edge than he intended. "Oh." The two stood awkwardly until, with a sigh, Charlie broke the tension. "All right, let's get this over with." "Oh, yeah," Ryan snapped to attention. Leaning into the stall she had hidden in earlier, she came back out with a sandy brown bag. With its chunky gold zipper tabs and surplus of exterior pockets, the backpack was constructed more like a designer bag than something to lug books to class. She held it up to her brother. "Let me give you a hand." "I got this," he said, taking the bag and handing back his baseball cap. Now free, Charlie's hair tumbled down from the pile it had been kept in under the well-worn hat, settling at its unencumbered shoulder length. He unzipped a side pocket in Ryan's bag and, with the scrunchie he had no trouble finding there, quickly swept the messy chestnut tresses back into a high ponytail. With nothing else to do for the moment, Ryan's fingers toyed with the locket that dangled from the simple gold chain hung around her neck as she watched her twin from behind, his hair bouncing playfully while he systematically pulled an assortment of cosmetics from their resting places and arranged them on the stainless steel shelf that ran the length of the wall below the bathroom mirrors. "Just let me know if you do need me to explain anything," the girl offered, though any pause from her brother appeared to be more out of a desire to select the perfect thing than unfamiliarity with any one item. Tweezers in hand, Charlie was too focused to even brush away his sister's offer of help. He looked into the mirror, alternating between his own reflection and Ryan a few steps behind and just off to his side. Plucking purposefully, he only had a few hairs to clean up, any more that he might have worried about still not grown back in since the last time he had gone over his brows. He smoothed them down with his thumbs, happy that the shape was just right. A quick rinse with a cleanser and his initial prep work was complete. Like an artist working on a portrait, Charlie used Ryan as his reference, his own face, his canvas. The boy with the delicate features applied a light layer of tinted moisturizer, priming his skin and giving his washed-out complexion a healthy glow. Next was a few spots of concealer where a red acne bump threatened to spoil the desired uniformity. Ryan preferred the natural look, so Charlie didn't have much work to do around his eyes. A steady hand drew thin lines of black on the upper lash lines, then a couple swipes of mascara and a quick clamp to give his eyelashes that painfully inviting flutter, the kind that melted hearts and stiffened other parts. Switching to a big, fluffy brush, Charlie bypassed 2 different plastic clamshells and selected a third. He clicked open the palette, a quartet of powders pressed into perfect squares of barely varied shades. The bristles were tapped into the most used of the 4. Charlie sucked his cheeks in and with a flurry of circles, left a rosy hue along the ridges created by prominent cheekbones. He swept the brush across the bridge of a narrow nose, back and forth from one side to the other to give the appearance of a shy, permanent flush. He picked up a stiff, pen-sized brush and returned to the circular compact he had passed over moments earlier. With several more swift strokes, Charlie picked and poked and blended glittery silver highlighter in a few choice spots. "You've gotten really good at that," Ryan complimented her brother. When they had started doing this, Charlie was a begrudging participant, a dead fish in front of the mirror while she did all the work. Even up until a few months ago, she had to walk him through every step as he disinterestedly followed instructions. But she knew he was a fast study, and what a difference repetition made as she watched her brother reach for the peachy shade of nude lipstick she had used that morning. "Oh, wait, this part's tricky." Ryan moved to step in and help, but Charlie, still seemingly in his own little world, ignored her as he rolled on a quick coat of the waxy lipstick, blotted, puckered up, and finished by deftly brushing on petal pink gloss. Or maybe not. Turning this way and that, Charlie took his face in from several angles. A slight curl came to the corners of his mouth as he couldn't help but feel proud of his work. From nothing to a full face in just shy of 15 minutes. He slipped the scrunchie from his hair, keeping it on his wrist like a bracelet, and combed out any tangles with his fingers. "Charlie, where'd you figure out that's how I did my lips today?" "Huh? Oh, you shared that TikTok about it." The everyday glass lip, he casually answered while he continued to primp in the mirror. Had it not been for the couple dozen times they had done this already, the transformation would be astonishing. They may be twins, but standing side by side the two were more like clones, their mismatched clothing the only dead giveaway for which was which. One wore a cute outfit of a long-sleeved, slate-gray mock turtleneck cropped right at the high waistband of a gently ruffled tartan skirt. The pleated wool that hid at mid-thigh was hemmed in teasing black lace and allowed for just enough leg to not run afoul of the dress code. The look was completed by bunched-up, calf-high crew socks and clean charcoal sneakers. The other twin wore an oversized black hoodie, featureless and devoid of design, and heavy denim jeans a couple inches too long, frayed and ripped at the back heel where they were stepped on endlessly by clumsy, brown and tan low tops. Charlie swept at his hair one more time, the only feature from the neck up that was not quite identical to his sibling. Ryan's was just a few more inches past her shoulder and just a little more wavy from having been subjected to a curling iron where his wasn't. "Weren't you the one who told me boys don't notice stuff like that?" Ryan interrupted her brother's fidgeting as if she was reading his mind. She put her hands on his shoulders and rested her head next to his, appreciating the resemblance up close. "Now come on, we're wasting time." She tore Charlie away from the mirror and pushed him into the leftmost stall, taking the one to its right for herself. The door latched with a sharp clack. Charlie stood in the cramped cubicle. He pawed at his bangs, finally getting them to stay how he wanted, just in time for a bundle of foam-padded nylon and whisper-soft wool to fall on his head and spoil his efforts. He caught his sister's discarded clothing before anything could hit the floor and went about removing his own significantly heavier wardrobe. Sweatshirt and jeans were passed above the divider wall to waiting hands while shoes were slid under. Stripped to a pair of blue and yellow candy-striped boxer briefs, nearly naked in the girls' bathroom, Charlie was quick to step into his newly acquired skirt and settle it around his waist. He rued the next article of clothing, the strappy, lacy thing that he held at arm's length. Doing as his sister had taught him, and wondering how many guys could say the same, he wrapped the bra around him, fastening the hooks in front of his flat belly. A pause as the tag on the band alerted him to a recent and unannounced upgrade from B to C. Charlie spun the contraption around, hoisting the straps onto his shoulders. The tissues he had prepared weren't enough, as he looked around for something that could fill the larger-than-expected cups while also providing a little weight. Guys may not notice things like hair, but they sure as hell paid attention to what's under a girl's sweater. Or what they think is there, at least. Charlie took extra care to pull the high-neck sweater over his head without smudging the work of art that was his face. The stall doors opened in unison. From the left stepped a girl with bouncy, shoulder-length chestnut hair. She wore a cozy sweater, flirty skirt, and sporty sneakers without socks. Emerging from the stall next to hers was a tomboyish but still cute girl who must have raided her brother's closet for a 2 sizes too large sweatshirt and jeans that were held up by a belt pulled to its last hole. A baseball cap was mashed down on her head, with loose, glossy brown curls spilling from its sides. Whether it was Ryan's inherent girlishness or some other undefined factor, for all of the success that Charlie had in impersonating his sister, the reverse always came up short. More than clothes, the two were the same height and nearly the same weight, but from the moment Charlie had stepped back out, he appeared sprightlier than when he had entered, a transformation that Ryan failed to replicate. "Did you have to wear such a short skirt?" Charlie whined. He shifted on his feet as he tugged at the lace-adorned hem. "My underwear's practically showing." "Then don't bend over," Ryan teased her pretty brother with a smile. This wasn't the first time Charlie had complained about the clothes he had to wear, but Ryan was less inclined to grant his arguing any seriousness considering his hairless and moisturized legs that had no business being hidden under a pair of jeans. The glare Charlie gave his sister could have melted steel. "Whatever, at least I get to tell that prick Gavin Keen to go fuck himself. Almost makes this worth it." "Hey, you know the deal," Ryan grabbed Charlie's slender arm. "Let him down gently." "Oh, for sure. Charlie. I'm serious." Ryan's tone left no doubt about that. "Tell me what you're going to say to him." The boy dressed in his sister's clothes put a hand on his hip and pointed one knee out. He cleared his throat and hummed until he found a particular note. "Gavin, you're like so totally hot, no cap, but I'm like such a Virgo and you're giving mad Scorpio." Charlie spoke in a perfect copy of Ryan's voice. "Stop it. I do not talk like that." Ryan replied in dismay. "On God, you have like negative riz," Charlie shot back. "Quit it," the two said in perfect harmony. Ryan stamped her foot, vexed by the childish copycatting. "Oh yeah," she pitched her voice lower, not even coming close to matching her twin's natural sound. "I'm Charlie and I would rather read comic books all day than go outside and talk to a real girl." A hand shot to his mouth and Charlie sputtered, I can't believe you'd say that." His nose wrinkled and eyes fluttered like he was fighting back tears. Ryan instantly felt a stab in her heart, afraid she had gone too far with that insult. "I haven't read comics since Robbie Rodriguez stopped doing the art for Spider-Gwen." "You brat," Ryan swatted at a giggling Charlie. He dodged her next smack, backed against the door. "Just be nice. Please." He gave a nod of agreement and started out the door. "Wait." Ryan stopped him. She fished down the front of her borrowed sweatshirt, extracting her locket. Almost forgot, she said, clasping the necklace around Charlie's neck. The gym was on the opposite side of the school. A building to itself, it was surrounded on two sides by the teacher's parking lot and an expanse of ball fields. One other side faced the interior courtyard, cutting through the grass and benches, the route most students took to get there quickest. The last side, a blank brick wall that ran the length of a narrow paved alley fenced in on both sides, was only accessible from a back hallway, the building's single interior link to the rest of the school buildings. A hint of a smile still on his lips, Charlie navigated the twisting passageways. Dressed in a skirt and a sweater that would flash his belly if he lifted his arms above his head, he was confident in his disguise but was put at ease knowing that this late after the last bell there shouldn't be anybody else between him and his destination. The boy was waiting patiently for him. Gavin Keene, already changed into his uniform with his helmet tucked under his arm. Charlie wondered how long he would have waited for him if he or his sister had never shown up. How much would he risk his coach's ire just to hear Ryan's answer? Gavin moved his helmet from one hand to the other. Hey, he tried to look nonchalant, the single word he dared to utter strained as he puffed out his chest and not so subtly flexed his biceps. Oh good, you're still here, Charlie replied in his sister's voice. I had something to take care of, but it's cool you waited for me. The slight went unnoticed as Gavin was too busy giving a long and languorous look up and down Charlie's legs. His gaze continued up and rested on the swell created by fake breasts. No problem, I'd wait all day for you, baby, Gavin said to the cross-dressed boy's chest. Charlie gave a slight shake of the head, his opinion of the jock vindicated. So, go ahead. Give me your best shot. Gavin took a step closer to Charlie. Close enough to reach out and touch him. Close enough to bust the smaller boy's nose if his deception was found out. I was thinking, Matty Bonanno's having a party next weekend and I thought I could give you a ride. Gavin's gaze had never made it all the way to meet Charlie's, but it had dropped to his own feet as he spoke. He kicked at a discarded vape pod, causing it to skitter into an unseen corner. And, you know, we could go together? What color are my eyes? Huh? Gavin's confused face finally rose to meet Charlie's eyes, finding closed lids blocking him from the answer. What does that matter? You want to go out with me, right? Well, I think a boyfriend should know his girlfriend's eye color, unless he's been staring at her tits this whole time. Gavin was taken aback, in part by the direct aggression, and just as much by the coarse language. Ryan had a reputation of being a goody-goody, docile, so sweet she'd give you a cavity. He never expected her to be hiding this kind of edge. Green, he guessed. Charlie opened his eyes, his big, brown eyes. Nice try, hotshot, but maybe next time play the odds and go with the eye color that half the people on the planet have. So what? You're saying you won't go with me because I got it wrong? Gavin asked, his anger growing. Charlie closed the distance between the two further, poking a slender finger into the athlete's muscled chest. I'm saying no because you're inconsiderate. I'm saying no because you barely know anything about me. And I'm saying no because you messed with my brother's friend today and I can't forgive that. What are you talking about? I wouldn't go anywhere near the freaks your brother hangs out with. You think I would waste my time with any of them? Then who tripped Paul Swain today at lunch? Puke stain? That's what this is about. The little cockgobbler tripped over his own feet, Gavin snorted derisively. Whatever. I'm sorry, all right? Gavin wasn't happy about apologizing, especially for something he couldn't remember if he had done or not, but if it meant the chance to hook up with Ryan, he would swallow his pride. Gavin, Charlie looked up at him and fluttered his eyelashes. That must have been hard for you. He stopped jabbing with his finger and traced the number along the front of Gavin's shirt. So you'll go to the party with me? He looked so hopeful. Never. And with a single word, his dreams were crushed. Gavin stood stunned, unprepared to have been rejected so decisively. Not just no, but never. That should have been enough, but seeing the cocky bully on the ropes, Charlie couldn't help the urge to deliver the knockout blow. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not with an immature asshole like you. You're nothing more than a boy pretending to be a man. Charlie almost felt bad. Almost. He was going to have to apologize to Ryan for doing the mean girl routine. And still, he continued, by the way, girls talk, and we all know about the pathetic little micropeen you've got hiding in those shorts. That last bit may or may not have been true, Charlie honestly didn't know, but he was willing to bet that the chance of the girls in school thinking the big strong jock had a teeny tiny dick would be enough to send Gavin into a prolonged tailspin. Charlie was definitely going to have to apologize to Ryan. Composing his apology in his mind, Charlie floated through the halls, so happy with his performance he even threw in a quick spin on one foot as he headed back towards the science building. He turned a corner and in his distraction ran smack into a soft body. Charlie stumbled, falling onto his backside with a girlish cry. He looked up from his seat on the sneaker-streaked floor, right at his best friend. He wasn't sure if he should try to explain himself or just run, but the way Paul looked everywhere but at the person he had just bowled over gave Charlie pause. With sudden realization, a hand shot between his legs, reflexively covering himself up before his friend could see up his short skirt. Paul's hands stayed jammed in his pockets while Charlie got himself up from the floor and patted any dust from his borrowed clothes. "Why are you still here?" Charlie asked, making sure to keep using his sister's voice. "I was looking for Charlie. We were going to stop by the game shop after school today, but he disappeared," Paul explained. He then launched into detail about the new deliveries of minifigures, booster packs, and a laundry list of things that Charlie would normally be just as enthusiastic about if he wasn't terrified that the one person outside his family who could probably see through his disguise was right in front of him. Charlie focused. Stand like Ryan. Move like Ryan. Smile like Ryan. Be magnetic like Ryan. Sorry, you probably don't care about any of this nerd stuff. If only I was so lucky that there were any hot girls into 40K, Paul finished. Relief. Charlie felt like a weight was lifted from his narrow shoulders. A giggle slipped past his painted lips. Don't sell yourself short, Paul. That nerd stuff is cooler than you think. He reached out and gently squeezed his friend's forearm. I'm sure there's a super cute girl just waiting to be the sister of battle to your Black Templar. Still playing the part of Ryan, he told Paul that he would let his brother know to come find him, and with a wave of his fingers continued on through the doors to the science building. Paul nodded, rubbing the spot above his wrist that Charlie had just been holding, and absently mumbled a thanks to the now empty hall. The cafeteria spun up in its perpetual motion. The cosmic order unchanging, forever aligned. Charlie sat alone. Back in his usual corner, back in his usual clothes. He had scrubbed his face clean and switched back to his usual, boring self. His buoyant mood weighed down after admitting to Ryan his less than polite rejection of her suitor. She was unhappy, and after a brief back and forth ended with Charlie telling her that if she wanted better she could do it herself, she was as close to furious as the gentle-hearted girl could get. The two left school in opposite directions. Having returned to being Charlie, he caught Paul waiting for him in the student parking lot but no longer had the heart to follow him to the hobby shop. Charlie hadn't seen his best friend the entire morning. Paul wasn't in class and was still MIA by the time lunch started. It's not that Charlie was worried, it just meant his day was a little extra quiet, a little less animated. With half the period still to go, he considered going to the library to while away the time until his next class. He took a bite of his turkey and Swiss cheese sandwich, the bread somehow both soggy and stale from sitting in his locker for the past few hours. He pulled off the last bit of crust and balled it up into the paper bag he had used to pack his lunch. He took aim at the garbage can about a dozen feet away from him and let fly the crumpled trash. It sailed through the air in a lazy arc, hitting the edge of the can and rolling into the mess of empty milk cartons, overboiled vegetables, and half-eaten sloppy joes inside. The shot would be an easy one for somebody with athletic aptitude, but for Charlie, it may as well have been 1 in a million. He gave a tiny fist pump, hoping this was a sign that his day would be just as lucky. He gathered his things and started walking to the cafeteria door. When he was only a few steps away, it flung open. Paul strode purposely through, practically knocking Charlie over for the second time in 2 days. "Hey, where have you been?" Charlie asked his previously absent friend. Barely stopping to address the question, Paul looked like a man possessed. "Sorry, Charlie. There's something I have to do, and if I don't do it now, I never will." Paul brushed past a confused Charlie, and like a rogue comet breaking its orbit, the insignificant chunk of debris doomed to spend its life far away from the action and warmth of the sun, he streamed dead ahead toward the center of the cafeteria. "Paul, don't!" Charlie called out. "I have to, Charlie." He balled his hands into fists and gritted his teeth. The disruption to the natural order was enough to get some of the kids sitting at the inner tables to take notice of the potential intrusion, not least among them Gavin Keene. "Go back to your fucking corner, puke stain," he warned Paul as the determined boy drew closer. Paul tried to ignore him but was stopped by Gavin's strong grip on his arm. "Let go!" The prospect of a fight got the large room's attention, a couple hundred pairs of eyes focused on the nerd and the star athlete. "I'm trying to be nice here, puke stain," Gavin growled. He tightened his hold on Paul's arm, causing him to wince. "Kick his ass," a shout came from somewhere in the crowd. Gavin was happy to oblige, and still holding Paul's arm, levered the limb behind his back. Tears sprung to the corner of Paul's eyes, pain knifing deep into his shoulder. "Please, I need to do this," he whined. "Just for once, don't be a dick and let me through." The pressure on the joint was growing unbearable and it felt like it could pop at any moment. "Let him go!" Ryan's sweet voice cut through the low din of excited students waiting to see a fight. Gavin paused for a second, the pudgy boy writhing in his grasp. "Why do you care about this loser?" he spit at Ryan, the wound of what he thought was her rejection of him still fresh. "Just let him go." "You're hurting him," she implored. The mood of the crowd shifted, the bloodlust tempered by Ryan's pleas. Suddenly, a one-sided beatdown seemed repulsive. Gavin sensed the crowd turning against him and knew anything else he did to Paul would only make him look like the bad guy. "Fine, if you love him so much then you can have him." He pushed Paul away, sending him stumbling into Ryan's arms. She gave her brother's friend a wan smile and helped him straighten back up. "You okay?" "Yeah, thanks." "I don't think anything's broken," Paul massaged his shoulder. "All right. Well, see you later." She turned to go back to her seat. "Wait, Ryan," Paul said louder than he meant to. He took a deep breath to steady his nerves. "I was coming over here for a reason." "Oh." Ryan didn't like where this was heading, instinctively seeking out her brother in the crowd but not finding him. "I wanted to ask you something." Oh no, she could always tell when this was coming. Her eyes darted frantically, looking for Charlie. He could stop this before it was too late. "Will you wait?" She cut off the poor boy before he could get the doomed question out. "Paul, you're a nice guy." She saw the pain begin to creep onto his face. "The hurt of the inevitable. And you're my brother's best friend, kinda like another brother." She stalled. Where the hell was Charlie? And watching Paul's heart break in front of her was too much to bear. After school. Meet me behind the gym. Not waiting for acknowledgement, Ryan bundled her backpack up into her arms and hurried out of the lunchroom. She tore down the hallway, nearly colliding with Charlie, who was coming the other way. Where the heck were you? Ryan hissed. She took hold of her brother's skinny bicep and pulled him along, continuing in the direction she had been headed. Looking for a teacher, Charlie meekly replied, moving quickly to keep up with his sister. Ryan slowed to peer into each classroom she passed, eventually settling on one that suited whatever criteria she was after. She dragged Charlie inside and shut the door. What? What happened? I figured a teacher could break up the fight. What happened? Your best friend tried to ask me out, Charlie, Ryan gave the terse summary. Wait, so he wasn't going to fight Gavin? Charlie had badly misread the look of determination that he had seen in Paul's eyes. There were more than enough stories of a nerd being bullied past the breaking point for him to have jumped to that conclusion. Oh, thank God. Charlie, are you listening? Paul tried to ask me out, Ryan spelled out for her slow to catch on brother. Charlie nodded along, processing the meaning of what his sister was saying. Once the magnitude of her words penetrated the veil of disbelief, he wished he hadn't heard her. You can't expect me to, he let the question hang. He's your friend, Charlie. Yeah, and that's all the more reason I shouldn't. Ryan turned away to face the empty classroom. She went over to the whiteboard and picked a black marker from the tray that sat beneath its bottom edge. She uncapped and recapped the marker, a sharp click each time the plastic snapped into place. Please, she asked softly, turning back to her brother. Please, Charlie? The look on his face when I tried back in the cafeteria. The pace of the cap clicking increased. You know I can't. Charlie lifted his hat, running a hand through his hair and grasping a fistful as he reached the nape of his neck. He'll see right through it, he said, his conviction wavering. Charlie thought back to the day before. They had been face to face, had a conversation, Charlie had even touched him and Paul hadn't noticed. Fine. I'll do it. The first time is by chance. The second time can be written off as a coincidence. By the third, fourth, fifth there has to be a rational explanation. Some reason, Charlie was still trying to figure out why he was once again staring at a mirror and seeing his twin sister's face stare right back. All the times before there was a purpose, somebody who deserved it, but this time was Charlie's fault. Ow. A sharp tug at his hair snapped Charlie's whole head back. Stay still, Ryan, his current tormentor, offered him no pity. How on earth did your hair get this tangled? Did you use the conditioner like I told you? Brush in one hand and a blow dryer in the other, she attacked the damp rat's nest atop his head. Yes, Ryan, Charlie rolled his eyes, sounding every bit the petulant child, and the cream rinse, and lotion, and even that hair remover stuff you told me to smear all over my body. The remnants of the last item on that list still prickled his raw and chemically denuded skin. God, I smell like somebody crashed a truck full of fruit into a flower shop. Hey, don't get all pissy with me. You think I wanted to spend my Saturday getting my brother ready to go on my first date? Charlie opened his mouth to protest, but the sight of those pretty carmine lips, plumped and pouty from more kinds of lipstick, oil, and balm than he could keep track of, shut him up better than anything else his sister could say. It should have only taken a few minutes. In and out, don't let him get a word in, and then Charlie could put the whole thing behind him as just another weird thing he would never tell anybody else about. But it had to be Paul. His best friend. Charlie hesitated, and that was enough for the boy he had copied homework from, stayed up all night arguing over who the best doctor was, shared a pull-out couch with during sleepovers, just enough time for Paul to ask him out. Or really to ask Ryan to go to the movies with him that weekend. The new Dune. Charlie should have done what he'd done a dozen times before. All he had to do was say no. Tell Paul, "Thanks, that's real sweet, but sorry." Dash his hopes. Break his heart. It should have been easy. But it wasn't. And now Charlie was sitting in his sister's room wearing nothing but a towel, not knowing what to do with his hands while he waited for the last coat on his nails to dry. Red to match his lips and with the slightest hint of glitter. There, all done. Ryan finished off her work with a flourish. Charlie was used to looking like his sister, but he couldn't remember her ever looking like this. Maybe if she was a few years older, or if she was the type of girl who went to clubs. It dawned on him ever so slowly that is exactly the look she was going for. This was Ryan's date night look, and she had executed it perfectly, except instead of her, he was the one turned into the perfect copy of a glam teen queen. His hair was swept back and around with a side part. So much body, it was feathered and curled and bounced against his shoulders with an airy flip. His brows, already shaped from regular tweezing, were filled in and thickened with brow gel to create the statement that defined his face. The clean girl look was on break for a night as Ryan unleashed techniques Charlie had never seen her use before to smother, brush, and dab a beauty counter's worth of products across his skin. A smoldering fire burned in his cheeks, a twinkle of highlight emphasized the button of his upturned nose. His eyes were shaded dark and smoky, lashes curled and brushed with volumizing mascara, lids lined with a thick black line on top and white on the bottom to make them large and doe-like but still mysterious at the same time. And those lips, once again he marveled at what she did to his lips. So velvety, so kissable. No, there wasn't going to be any kissing tonight. Charlie broke his reflection's gaze, eager to move on to whatever the next step was. Ryan, from her closet, was tossing one outfit after another onto her bed. "Put those on," she said, indicating two conspicuous pieces of black lace that had just sailed across the room. Charlie inspected the underwear. He wanted to think of it the way he always did, as basically the same as his own, only with a different cut and a little less fabric, but that wasn't possible with this. His briefs didn't have sides cut high, so they looped above his hips. His undershirts didn't have padding and underwire. His underwear wasn't made of stretchy lace that strategically left certain parts see-through. There was no way to describe the bra and panty set that was left for him other than with its name, lingerie. "Where did you get these?" Charlie asked, holding the offending garments from two ruby-nailed fingers. "Why, you looking to get a set for yourself?" Ryan teased, her back still turned as she was busy with the closet. "That's not what I meant," Charlie muttered. With the illusion of privacy, he took the opportunity to quickly slide the panties up his smooth legs and clasp the bra closed around his chest. He tried his best to settle the empty cups, but the straps hung loose without any weight to add tension. "You good?" Ryan didn't wait for an answer, carrying in her arms the half-dozen selections she had settled on from her wardrobe. "Hey!" "No." Charlie moved to cover himself. "Oh, relax, it's not like I haven't seen you in your bra and panties before. These aren't mine." "Are now?" Ryan dropped the bouquet of clothing, differing colors and materials each on their own hanger, over the back of the chair Charlie had been sitting in while she did his hair and makeup. "They're from Aerie, by the way. Just in case you do want to pick up some more." She came over and tugged on her brother's bra strap, failing to help adjust it. Socks aren't going to cut it this time." "Way ahead of you," Charlie said with a bit of unhidden pride. "I knew we needed something that could hold up to close attention." Picking up something from a bag he had brought into Ryan's room, he hefted a water balloon. "Not that I want the attention," he quickly added. The balloon looked like any other that would be used for some fun on a hot summer day. It wobbled and jiggled in his palm, more than a handful. The best part, I used a cornstarch slurry. What are you talking about? Charlie's dark-shadowed eyes lit up, cornstarch and water. It's a non-Newtonian fluid. God, you're such a nerd. No, look, a non-Newtonian fluid means that Ryan cut him off. I know what a non-Newtonian fluid is. You're not the only one who got an A in chemistry, you know. So what? Like those'll turn hard if somebody pokes them? Well, yeah, I guess. Charlie slipped the pair of balloons into the cups, and with a movement belying hours of practice, scooped the fake breasts and slid a thumb along each bra strap in one uninterrupted motion to get everything fitted perfectly. But it's really about it being more realistic. Like they move more naturally than regular water and they have some give when you squeeze them. Ryan gave her brother a funny look at that last point. All right, well, let's finish getting you dressed, she said, moving on. I think these will work best. She gestured to the outfits that she had just brought out. Outfit number 1, a black tube that stretched into place, clinging all the way to every curve of Charlie's homemade breasts and slim hips. Strapless, he alternated tugging at the neck and hem, trying to find the secret to tricking the spandex dress into covering more than a few inches of thigh before its abrupt end. Definitely not, was Ryan's immediate judgment, a verdict which her brother silently enjoined. Outfit number 2, frilly in pink, ruffles and lace. The fairy dress covered more than the last with full sleeves and a high neck. The poofy skirts swirled around Charlie's legs as he dutifully obeyed his sister's request for him to do a spin. Ryan stifled a laugh at the sight of Charlie in the children's party dress. I for sure thought I had told Mom to put that in the donation box. Outfit number 3, much better, this time Charlie wore a knee-length sweater dress. The cable knit gave depth to the plum-colored weave while drawing lines to help accentuate his boyish curves. With a hand on her chin, Ryan inspected things from different angles, but something continued to seem off. She rummaged for something in a dresser drawer. Try these, she handed Charlie a ball of black nylon. Come on, really? They're just tights. The way she said it was almost taunting, daring him to give a reason why this was where he'd draw the line, a defense she knew he didn't have since he always caved. Sure enough, Charlie complied, taking his time to roll one leg up and then the other. He reached up under the skirt of his dress and snapped the waistband of the tights into place. Opaque, midnight black, with a dense thread count. Charlie would have wondered why it was important he shave his legs so close if it weren't for the slippery, silky feel of nylon on his skin. Nope, coloring's all wrong, Ryan nixed another one. What? This one's good, Charlie protested. What's wrong with this one? Like, this is totally good enough. Ryan shook her head, the purple and red completely clash. I was hoping the tights could give us a different base, that the other colors could be good complements, but it's just so not working and I'm not about to redo all your makeup. Most of the explanation went over Charlie's head, but what he did get was that it would be easier and quicker to just move on to the next outfit. Outfit number 4, wait, leave the tights on. Outfit number 4, for real this time. This one was red, not exactly the same shade as his lips and nails, but close enough. The skater dress clung to Charlie in all the right places while not being as overtly skanky as the bodycon dress he first tried on. The skirt was flouncy without being poofy, making its way to mid-thigh. It was still shorter than Charlie would like. Little cap sleeves took advantage of his narrow shoulders to give an even more girlish silhouette. Resigned to the dress, Charlie picked at the deep scoop neckline, a vain attempt. So close, and yet so far. Yeah, definitely no good, Ryan sighed. The neck was cut too low, designed to show off more than enough of the wearer's chest. Can't show cleavage when your boobs are a science experiment, huh? Charlie scoffed, an attempt at humor to cover his frustration. He stripped out of the dress, his patience worn thin. Just let me wear jeans. You wear jeans all the time. And we're only going to the movies, not the prom or anything. Because I wouldn't wear jeans on a date, that's why. Outfit number 5, Charlie found himself zipped into a pine green dress. It had puffed half sleeves made of a semi-sheer mesh and a figure-hugging bodice. Its eyelet lace design started from a band at the waist and traveled down through the triple-tiered skirt. The dress had a square-cut neck and fluttered to a stop a couple inches above the knee. Charlie liked it best of all of the dresses he had tried on. He also hated to admit that there was a dress that he liked best. Good, now it's time for shoes. Ryan stood a pair of boots at her brother's stockinged feet. And before you complain again, I'm letting you know I'm going easy here. These barely have a heel. Barely a heel, Charlie felt like he was going to fall over in the black suede ankle boots. He wobbled over to his sister, trying his best not to turn an ankle on the 2-inch tapered heels. You've gotta be kidding me. Every girl can handle these no problem. Ryan rolled her eyes as her brother did his best impression of a baby deer learning to walk while also fighting the urge to point out the central flaw of her statement: he's not a girl. Whatever, just keep practicing. Charlie did laps around his sister's room, his balance improving with each tight circle in the limited space. While his confidence grew, Ryan busied herself preparing a bag. Makeup for any needed touch-ups, a hairbrush, her ID and some cash tucked into an interior pocket, and a few other odds and ends every girl shouldn't leave home without. She handed over the satchel bag, made from deep black leather, and demonstrated the 2 straps so that Charlie could either carry it in hand or sling it across his body as needed. She had him walk a few more times carrying the bag, silently judging the whole ensemble. Ryan was grateful for everything Charlie was doing, even if he had been a brat most of the afternoon, and she wouldn't tell him this, but she had really enjoyed having a life-size dress-up doll for the day. Give me your phone. Ryan held hers out to Charlie. Can't we just swap cases? They were identical models. The only thing to differentiate the two was the spangly white wrap covering Ryan's and the muted black rubber on Charlie's. If only it were so simple. What if Paul tries to message Charlie while you're with him? Good luck explaining that. He hadn't thought of that. Charlie took the phone and left his on the bed. He flipped the device over in his blaze-tipped fingers. The facial recognition lock sprung open without a complaint. Charlie took a deep breath. The clock let him know that his date was set to arrive any minute. The overly loud muffler of Paul's car preceded him into their driveway, followed shortly by Charlie's borrowed phone lighting up with a message. This is it, Charlie said to nobody in particular. You've got this. Ryan put a hand on Charlie's shoulder. He was the littlest bit taller than her at the moment thanks to the boots. She pulled him in for a hug, which the two abruptly broke when they heard the doorbell ring. The idiot! I told him to wait for me outside. Downstairs, the twins' mother greeted her son's best friend. Paul, don't you look handsome tonight, she observed the boy with a raised eyebrow. The kid, who was more likely to be wearing a Dorito dust-flecked t-shirt and shorts no matter the weather, had shown up that evening in a button-down and pressed khakis. His mother's doing, no doubt, but the pleats on his pants were spot on. Charlie's in his room, why don't you go on up? Paul rubbed the back of his head, accidentally musing his coiffure into a cowlick. Hi, Mrs. O'Connor. He looked down at his feet, his heavy black shoes rooting him to the spot like they were made of cement. I'm actually here for Ryan. Excuse me? She asked. Genuinely confused, she must have misheard. I'm here to pick her up for, we're going on a dash. Paul stumbled over his own words, when a stampede of click-clacking high heels barreled down the stairs, interrupting him before he could complete his jumbled thought. Charlie hung onto the banister for dear life as his momentum nearly sent him toppling skirted ass over tea kettle. Not daring to try his luck, he avoided his mother's bewildered look and put on his best Ryan voice. "We're going to the movies by Mom Love You," he said in one quick breath. Charlie grabbed Paul's arm and pulled him out the door, working those heels like his life depended on it as he made his way down the front walk at double speed. "Don't stay out too late?" she responded, uncertain, left in the aftermath of the whirlwind that had just blown through. A second to gather herself, then she calmly walked upstairs, past her son's closed bedroom door and knocked with purpose on her daughter's. She gave it a beat and without invitation turned the knob. In the measured tone of a mother who had dealt with her fair share of stress over the past 18 years, she addressed her startled daughter. "Ryan Catherine O'Connor, would you like to tell me why your brother just ran out of here wearing the dress you begged me to buy you this past summer?" Oxygen combines with hydrogen to make water. Water interacts with iron, stripping the oxygen molecule and leaving two hydrogens. The end result creates iron oxide and, with the help of some other sources of carbon in the air, abiding acid. Together, the chemicals corrode the previously pristine metal, causing it to blister and scar into sickly orange flakes. Thank God for ionic bonds, without which the muffler on Paul's car wouldn't have been rusted away. The persistent drone belching from the golf ball-sized hole in the tailpipe served to drown out the interminable quiet that fell over the car's passengers. He knew it would be awkward. How could it not when he was wearing a dress in front of his best friend? How would it not be when his makeup was done to hide any traces of the boy that he was? But Paul didn't know that the person under all of that was really Charlie, and quite frankly, his silence was blowing their date. A twang of compassion thrummed through the cross-dressed boy. Yes, this was a first date, and it was absolutely going to be their last, but that didn't mean the whole thing had to be a disaster. Charlie was still going to have to break Paul's heart, but he did agree to go on this date, and the least he could do was let him down gently. After a free movie, of course. "So, how did you do on that quiz in world history?" Charlie offered a lifeline. "Could have been worse." Charlie tried again, hoping to coax a little more out. "Yeah, I can't believe there was all that stuff about the War of Spanish Succession." "Like, who cares about that?" Paul's attention flickered, his eyes briefly cutting from the road over to the passenger seat. "Oh, did Charlie tell you about it?" "That's right, Ryan wasn't in that class. She wouldn't know what was on that quiz." Yeah. You know my brother, he never shuts up about school stuff." To Charlie's relief, Paul seemed to buy the explanation. The save also made Charlie realize his mistakes so far. He was approaching this date from Charlie's mindset, but he needed to think about things more like Ryan. His sister was outgoing, fun, and knew how to get somebody to open up. Where Charlie would keep to himself, Ryan would see a situation like this as an opportunity to get to know somebody better. It didn't matter that he already knew everything about his best friend, because Ryan didn't. All he had to do was play dumb, ask a few questions, and let Paul fill in the rest. The strategy worked like a charm. The rest of the ride was spent with Paul telling stories, most of which Charlie had been present for. The hardest part for Charlie was keeping himself from jumping in to fill in any forgotten details or correct any embellishments. If it had been the two of them at the lunch table, he would have found the way his friend changed details to pump himself up to be obnoxious, but knowing that he was doing it to impress who he thought was the cute girl he was taking on a date was somehow endearing. While recounting one of his greatest victories, Paul found a parking spot in the crowded multiplex lot. He was playing blue/black control, so everything I put out there was immediately getting wiped out. Just like monster, banish, monster, banish. For like 7 turns. But he didn't realize I was just buying time. Paul came around and held Charlie's door open for him to get out. Keeping his knees together, Charlie gracefully exited the car and the two began walking to the entrance, the thok-thok of his heels on the asphalt keeping time as he noticed Paul slow down to match his shortened stride. Eventually his draws start going bad, while I'm just hoping to set up my secret weapon. A planeswalker, Charlie said, absent-mindedly. Yeah. Exactly. Wait, you play magic? Mentally kicking himself for the slip-up, Charlie figured he'd go with the same gambit as before. My brother, you know how he is. He used to make me play with him when we were little. I never liked it though. That wasn't far off from the truth. Before he met Paul, Charlie had tried to get Ryan to join him in some of the nerdy stuff he liked, but she never showed any interest, usually only participating when their parents told her she had to. Oh, okay, Paul sounded disappointed. But your story was super interesting. Charlie put a hand on his date's upper arm, the casual contact causing him to perk back up. Maybe I just never gave it a fair chance. Paul chuckled, yeah, you should definitely play a game with me and Charlie next time. Charlie gave a strained smile at the invite. The movie theater was one of those palatial multiplexes that sprung up around the nation's suburbs a few decades ago. The lobby was massive, with polished floors and cardboard stand-ups of different superheroes and action stars. A cathedral to cinema from when the focus was on the classics, a simple screening without frills while gouging customers on concessions. Paul already had the tickets loaded to his phone, the only thing left was to get some snacks. Charlie opened his purse, finding the cash his sister had left him, but Paul waved him off, insisting on picking up the cost. He even sprung for 2 sodas, 1 regular Coke and 1 diet, to Charlie's relief. He didn't want to spend the movie figuring out a way to avoid sharing a straw, even if he would have preferred the one with real sugar. Past the ticket taker and down a long hallway, they found their theater and took their seats. Not quite center row, some real early arrivers had claimed those seats. While the rest of the rows filled in and they waited for the previews to start, Charlie tried his earlier trick of playing dumb. He asked Paul to remind him what happened in the last Dune movie, in return receiving a recitation that would put Wikipedia to shame. Charlie enjoyed the look of consternation on his friend's face when he decided to tell him that the only part he remembered was Jason Momoa because he had such a cute butt. That was definitely something Ryan would say, and Charlie was just playing the character. Something happened once the lights dimmed. All conversation stopped, but instead of the uneasiness of earlier, it was like any other movie he'd gone to with Paul. The same ads that he had seen a million times played, the same rhythm of a trailer followed by one or the other leaning in and whispering their thoughts on if that was a movie they'd want to go see. The only difference being that Charlie would normally be the one holding the popcorn, but with his purse occupying his lap, that responsibility was shifted to Paul. Charlie was enjoying the movie, but he noticed that as the bucket slowly emptied, he kept bumping hands with Paul more and more frequently. Whether it was purely accidental or innocent flirting, Charlie got his answer when Paul didn't wait for the next time he went for popcorn, clasping Charlie's smaller hand in his while it sat on their shared armrest. His instinct was to break free of the grasp, but for some reason he didn't want to spoil the mood. There was plenty of time for that later, Charlie rationalized. For now, he was focused on the movie. So they were holding hands, that was no big deal. He didn't even flinch when a little later he sensed Paul shift in his seat to be closer, or when Paul's hand left Charlie's and rested on the femmed boy's tights-encased knee. By then, he was impressed with how bold his nerdy best friend was willing to get, and if Charlie was being honest, he didn't mind the feel of a hand gently stroking the slippery fabric. Just as long as he didn't try to sneak that hand up any higher. They waited for the credits to finish rolling and the lights to come back up before leaving, fingers interlaced. The pair was barely halfway through comparing which parts of the movie were their favorites when they found themselves back at Paul's car. Charlie swallowed, this was it. He had completed the date and now it was time to end it, once and for all. Paul, he began, taking on the tone of somebody who has to inform a family their beloved pet cat needs to be put to sleep. This has been fun. He hesitated. Just like last time, behind the gym at school, when he couldn't do what he always did. I had a great time, but hey, it's only 9:30, Paul said, looking at his watch. Let's go to Lucinda's. I'm starving. Lucinda's was the local greasy spoon. First opened in the 70s, it was named for the owner's wife. They made their reputation on serving 20 different types of pancakes, milkshakes so thick you could stand a spoon up in them, and a 3-pound hamburger called the Big Buck. They opened early and closed late, and along with reasonable prices it soon became the default for anybody in town who wanted to grab a bite without having to think about it. Lucinda's had changed over the years, mostly updating their menu with the times. Their last edition was a killer poke bowl, but always stuck true to their roots. Against all odds, there was still a booth available when Charlie and Paul arrived about 20 minutes later. Most of the other tables were taken by kids from their high school looking to see how far they could stretch whatever pocket change they had accumulated throughout the week. The diner crackled with the unrestrained energy of teenagers amped up on cheap espresso and clumsy desire for the opposite sex. The boys were loud, the girls pretended they didn't enjoy the attention. And just like in the lunchroom, Charlie was glad to be tucked away safely in his little corner with Paul. Sat on either side of the formica-topped table, originally white now stained a deep yellow-brown from decades of spilled coffee, Charlie remembered to smooth his skirt, but it still rode up his legs annoyingly as he scooted across the vinyl seat deeper into the booth. Their harried waitress, a bottle blonde 20-something, dropped off 2 plastic cups filled with ice water, barely paying the time to acknowledge them aside from introducing herself as Ashley and saying she would be back in a few minutes. Paul wrapped the end of his straw against the tabletop, extracting it the rest of the way from its paper sleeve with his teeth. So why did you ask me out, anyway? Charlie wasn't sure why the question crossed his mind. He just felt in that moment, with his friend being the usual dweeb that he was, that he wanted to know why all of a sudden he found the courage to ask out Ryan. Paul stabbed his straw through a layer of ice before answering, I mean, besides that you're the hottest girl in school? Charlie narrowed his eyes at that. No, it was the other day. When I was looking for Charlie, you were nice to me when I was having a bad day. He dropped his gaze and fidgeted with the paper wrapper, and then you said that thing about there being somebody out there for me and I figured, why not? Paul smiled sheepishly. All I know is that I'm glad I did. Charlie felt his face grow warm, momentarily grateful for the layers of foundation hiding the blush that spread across his cheeks. It really was all his fault. His stomach sank, in part from the implication that he wouldn't be on this date with Paul if he had just walked down a different hallway that afternoon, and part because he really was having a good time. Change a few details and this would have been no different from 100 other times they had hung out. Except those details were glaring, and ignoring them wasn't going to make this night normal. I'm gonna use the restroom. Charlie needed space, for a few minutes at least. If you see the waitress, could you order me some cheesy tots, please? He made it 3 steps from the booth before turning back. He had forgotten his bag and hastily retrieved it. Having to remember to bring a purse with him was bad enough, the way his shoes forced him to swing his hips when he walked was worse, but the truly unnerving experience was how he could feel the eyes of all the boys at each table he passed roaming over his body. Never before had Charlie been so glad to enter the women's bathroom, an unexpected sanctuary on so many levels. Relieved to find it empty, the soda from earlier decided then was the time to exert some pressure on Charlie's bladder. He had been in the girls' bathroom at school plenty of times, but this was the first time he had to use a bathroom of the opposite sex for its intended purpose. He struggled with his clothes, discovering in the process that he had to hike his dress-tiered skirts practically above his waist while pulling his tights down to his knees. Feeling naked, Charlie did his business as fast as possible. He put himself back in order and washed his hands. Seeing his reflection in the dirty mirror above the sink, he thought to do something that any other girl would have taken for granted. He searched his bag and found the liquid lipstick his sister had left for him. Funny that he cared. It was all just going to get messed up again in 5 minutes when he was eating. As Charlie worked to restore his lips to their lush, velvety finish, the door to the bathroom swung open. The din from outside rushed past and around the 3 girls who entered, talking and laughing as loud as if they were still in the dining room. Charlie recognized them: Mercy DeMars, Danny Willett, and Aviva Gold. They were all in his grade, but he didn't exactly hang out in the same circles as the skinny and beautiful types. He'd be surprised if they even knew who he was. None of the group gave him a second look while Danny went into a stall and the other 2 posted up on either side of Charlie. "Hey, Ryan. I thought you weren't coming out tonight." Mercy directed the comment to Charlie's reflection in the mirror. "Love that color, by the way." She nodded to the lipstick he was still holding as she uncapped her own tube of mascara. The wheels in his head turned so quickly Charlie was afraid smoke would start coming out of his ears. Rejecting dumb boys was the extent of his social interactions in his Ryan disguise, and he was struggling to remember how girls talked to each other. Thanks, he figured he'd play it safe, casting about for something to return the compliment. "Your, outfit is super cute." All 3 girls were dressed more casually than he was: loose tops and jeans for all of them. What Charlie wouldn't give to get into one of their pants just then, or sweatshirt, or sneakers for that matter. "So what's up?" Aviva said from his other side. "Emmy said that Olivia asked if you wanted to come over earlier but that you never answered." Shoot, why did Ryan give him her phone, anyway? Charlie had forgotten to turn it back on after the movie and blanched at the number of messages sent to his sister he had probably missed. Both girls, then all 3 once Danny joined them at the mirror, pressed him on Ryan's suspicious behavior. The way he was dressed, his conspicuously overdone makeup, and the dead giveaway that he went to the bathroom by himself. It wasn't long before the girls were asking who he was on a date with. Charlie tried to deflect, and at the same time he couldn't figure out if they were having more fun naming every boy in the school who Charlie had ever wished would fall in a hole and not be found, or if they were just thrilled that Ryan had finally said yes to somebody. Apparently her unwillingness to date had become more than a meme at school. Some of the other girls had started a pool and took bets over who would be the lucky boy to get the first date. "Paul Swain," Charlie said in a small voice. "But, he's just a friend." "Who? Does he go to another school?" The girls really didn't know who he was. Then, recognition flashed across Aviva's face. "Wait, isn't he that SUS kid that your brother hangs out with? He used to let me copy his math homework." "He's not SUS." Charlie shot back, more forcefully than intended. "I mean, yeah, he's kinda shy, but he's a good guy." "Oh, yeah. No, sorry," Aviva demurred. "Yeah, Ryan, that's cool. And like you said, you're just friends, right?" Mercy added. The matter settled, Charlie said goodbye and left the girls to finish their touch-ups. He returned to his table, the loaded tater tots having beaten him there. Paul had waited, his nose buried in his phone until Charlie slid back into the booth. The 2 dug in, with Paul pausing briefly to comment on his surprise that Ryan would eat something so unhealthy. Charlie, growing tired of keeping everything straight, just shrugged, dismissing his usual order as a family favorite, like there needed to be a deeper reason why somebody would like fried potatoes smothered in cheese sauce, all topped with bacon bits and scallions. The couple took turns spearing at the oversized plate of carbs and saturated fats, sharing snippets of conversation between contented munching. A nagging itch burned at Charlie. He still had to do the thing, but before he could invent a new reason to keep procrastinating, what he saw out of the corner of his eye had stolen his attention. The girls he had run into in the bathroom had moved over to sit at the same table with some of the lacrosse players. Charlie couldn't hear what the conversation was, but judging from the pointed glare coming from Gavin Keene, he had an idea. "Hey Paul," I think we should probably get going, Charlie tried, but it was too late. Gavin had gotten up and was steaming towards them. The only thing to delay him was the irregularly laid-out tables and the kids sitting at them in his way. Puke stain, Gavin growled menacingly from a dozen feet away. He closed the distance in the time it took Paul to realize the danger he was in. Gavin grabbed 2 fistfuls of shirt and dragged Paul to his feet. You and me. Let's go, right now. Charlie leapt to his feet, putting an arm between the 2 boys. Get out of here, Gavin. He's not doing anything. Gavin turned to him, his face a mask of scorn and jealousy only a teenage boy could muster. This guy? Really? Then louder to make sure everyone in the diner could hear, I'm glad I decided not to go to Maddie's party with you. If he were thinking rationally, Charlie would have let that one pass. He loved his sister and wouldn't stand by while somebody insulted her, but some guy making up stories that nobody believed anyway shouldn't have registered. Then Gavin had to keep going. What's the matter, puke stain? You pay off the dyke to pretend to be your girlfriend? The cup of ice water was airborne before Charlie's brain could stop his hand. The splash was magnificent, crushed ice and a lemon wedge stuck to Gavin's adolescent stubble. The shock of the blast sent him stumbling back. His grip on Paul released, it was soon replaced with Charlie's painted fingers on his best friend's collar. With a sharp stare, he made sure the waterlogged jock was paying attention. You wish, Charlie said, then leaned up to press his lips to Paul's surprised mouth. The kiss was eager, sloppy in the way that 2 inexperienced lovers are. Sparks flew across Charlie's skin, and eventually Paul's hands found the small of his back, pulling him in closer. The world dropped away, 2 seconds or 2 minutes, neither could tell how long they had been joined. Finally, with a quiet slurping sound, they separated. Let's get going, Charlie whispered. Paul tossed a wadded ball of small bills on the table, only later hoping that it was enough of a tip for their overworked waitress, let alone however much the check was. They ignored the other diners as they headed for the exit, once again holding hands. They were in Paul's car, driving in some direction away from Lucinda's before the high of the kiss had worn off. The clock on the dashboard glowed 11:27 in dayglow green. A half hour until Charlie's theoretical curfew, theoretical because he had never been in the position to test it before. The possibility of punishment the furthest thing from his mind, Charlie's thoughts were racing, so many loose ends to tie up, so much to answer for. He was going to have to explain to Ryan why everybody in school just witnessed her first kiss if she hadn't already seen the video somebody there no doubt recorded and posted to social media. And that kiss, he couldn't explain why it had been so amazing. It was just supposed to be a show, to shut up that jerk Gavin Keane, and yet, there was still the biggest problem. Paul. Charlie told him not to take him home yet, that they needed to talk. The poor guy was too naive to realize the implications of that phrase. His head was still in the clouds, mentally reliving every microsecond of the kiss. The softness of those lips, the way her tongue flicked against his, how she sighed when she came up for air. If only he knew. There weren't a lot of places in their town for 2 teenagers to be alone that late at night. Any shopping plaza too public, the parks were patrolled by the overly bored local cops. After a little bit of driving, Paul chose to just pull over on the side of the road, a couple blocks from Charlie's house. With the car stopped and the engine cut, the interior light sprung on automatically. Even in the dull, low-watt yellow, Paul thought that his date was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He leaned in, hoping to recreate the magic from the diner. Charlie held out a hand, enough of a barrier to stop it from happening again. Look, Paul. He kneaded his fingers in the rough poly blend weave of Paul's shirt. It wouldn't be hard, to meet his advance, to let lips connect. His chest pounded, heart thumping what felt like an extra gallon of blood to every corner of his body, the heat burning him from the inside out. He couldn't look at Paul as the prickles of tears forming stung the corners of his pigment-rimmed eyes. "I'm sorry." His voice was so small, threatening to break if he put any force to it. "Hey, it's all right. Gavin's an asshole. Don't let it ruin the night." If only that was what would ruin the night. Some full of himself, wannabe Chad dickhead getting put in his place was what Charlie lived for. He wished that was the worst thing that was going to happen. Charlie took a deep breath. "No, listen. I need to tell you something." Or maybe he didn't. It wasn't too late. Paul didn't need to know. He could finish the date and then break up with Paul in a text. Then they could forget it ever happened, just pretend that Paul had one less than spectacular date with his sister. They could check out the new comics on Tuesdays, exchange notes in homeroom, and Charlie could stop worrying about whatever it was he was feeling for his best friend. When had their hands become entwined? When had Charlie let Paul wrap his fingers around his, holding them to the bigger boy's chest? Charlie could feel Paul's heartbeat, could tell that it matched his own palpitations, couldn't resist as Paul snuck a peck on his lips. "It's all right," he whispered. "No, it's not." Charlie lost control, pulling away from the seductive touch. He scrunched himself up, moving as far away as he could get in the cramped space of the passenger seat. "I fucking ruined everything. I lied to you." He was screaming. Paul laid a soothing hand on his date's knee. Charlie wanted to sweat it away, to rip off the tights that kept skin from touching skin, to throw away the dress and wipe the makeup from his face. "I'm a liar. I'm a liar." "Charlie, it's okay." Crimson lips parted, but before the next barrage could escape the boy dressed in his sister's clothes, "You know who I am," he realized what he had just heard. "You think I wouldn't?" The shame, the rage, the dread, all overwhelmed by a mix of confusion and fear. Charlie didn't know if he should ask the million questions that immediately sprung to mind or just make a break for it. He was close enough to home and he had gotten better in these heels as the night went on, but what pushed him over the edge was his wounded pride. "How?" Charlie asked, more annoyed than bewildered. "I look exactly like her. Bro, we hang out together all day, every day." "Oh God, so you knew the whole time?" The car's engine let off a continuous, staccato plinking noise, heat rapidly escaping into the cool night. "Not the whole time," Paul confessed. "Since when?" Charlie pressed, a little too eager, the consequences potentially too great. Paul looked away, gazing out through the windshield. His eyes tracked something in the darkness, like he was watching a replay of the night only he could see. "When?" "I mean, kinda not until 5 minutes ago. I wasn't completely sure until then, but I had some doubts." Irritated, Charlie pursed his lips and let out an anguished groan. "See, like that. Your sister wouldn't do that." The cross-dressed boy froze, suddenly self-conscious of every tiny movement, every halting breath. "And she wouldn't have the balls to throw a drink in Gavin's face like that." The double entendre earned a sweet giggle, "and she definitely wouldn't have such soft lips." Paul's hand had never left Charlie's knee, the two suddenly aware again of their proximity. Their faces so close, noses almost past each other as their lips found their partners once more. Insecurity was buried beneath gallons of teenage hormones. All that mattered was that they felt good, that it felt right. The deception was over, for however long it had lasted, Paul knew that he was kissing Charlie. Charlie knew that he wanted to kiss Paul. Hands roamed over familiar yet oh so unfamiliar bodies. Rubbing, squeezing, instincts kicked in and Paul copped a feel of artificial chest, stopping to ask, "How?" Charlie couldn't help but brag over the ingenious construction. "Non-Newtonian, that's the only way to go." Totally realistic, Paul agreed with false authority, as if either had ever felt breasts outside of a few particularly lurid dreams. They reclined the front seats and cuddled uncomfortably across the cup holders and gear shifter, staying that way for a while. The clock showed 1:09, Charlie was way past late. He told Paul he would walk the few blocks home from where they were parked, not wanting to risk the trumpeting exhaust waking up his family. They had a minor argument, their first spat, over Paul's insistence he walk with him. "It's dark and it's not safe for a girl on her own this late." Charlie countered by pointing out Paul wouldn't have said the same to him a day earlier, which got him flustered. "Whatever, somebody who looks like a girl. You know what I mean." Not said was that even if it had been the middle of the day, Paul wanted a little more time together. Their night had come to its end at the O'Connor family doorstep. The hard conversations would wait for later, in the light of day when they could figure out what the new development in their friendship meant. But right then, they were inseparable. "No, but really," Charlie broke off their latest round of tongue wrestling, "how did you figure it out?" Paul sighed, annoyed at the unrequested break. "It's your eyes," he said almost dismissively. "I didn't get a good look until Lucinda's, but your sister's eyes are a more golden brown, like caramel. Yours are darker, like, more muddy." Charlie was stunned. Stunned that anybody could know him so deeply. "Wait, you think my eyes look like mud?" He threw a weak punch at his date's shoulder, glancing off harmlessly. "Mud's better than the first thing I was going to say." The implication of something else brown that would leap to mind for an immature boy was met with another feeble punch. Paul pinned Charlie's arms to his sides, using the attempt to protect himself as an excuse to wrap Charlie in a tight embrace. One last kiss, toe curling and lip tingling. Charlie found his keys in the bag that had become his constant companion and tried his best to unlock the front door as quietly as possible. Paul had started down the driveway, looking back just in time to see the girl of his dreams disappear into the shadowy entrance. The house slept, stirred only by the pretty interloper. His first two steps echoed like hammer blows on the hardwood floors before Charlie pried the boots from his feet, immediately aware of the dull ache in his calves and toes. His bed called to him, only up a single set of stairs but so far away. Sleep now and deal with all of tomorrow's problems tomorrow. Ryan already knew about the kiss at Lucinda's. The string of messages she had sent from his phone that he had dutifully ignored told him as much. He still had to return her clothes, find a place to hide her boots and purse so his parents didn't see he had them, scrub the makeup from his face. He stopped in the kitchen for a glass of water. The red crescent that stained the rim made him wonder how much he had left on Paul. He opened the dishwasher and found a spot tucked in behind the dirty plates and silverware to hide the offending evidence of his girly disguise. The sound of a throat clearing caused Charlie to nearly jump out of his lotion-softened skin. He froze, a deer in headlights as the kitchen light flicked on. He blinked away the sudden brightness, the fuzzy outline of his mother standing in between him and safety. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, young lady?" Panic struck, short-circuiting any chance he had of putting together a coherent explanation of just what was going on. Of course, Charlie thought, she had mistaken him for Ryan. Not ideal, but it would be much easier to explain away breaking curfew than why her only son was out impersonating her only daughter. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said, making sure to use his best Ryan voice. "I didn't mean to, my phone died and I just lost track of time." Honest. Add one more thing he'd have to apologize to Ryan for. Hopefully their mother would let her off with a warning for a first offense. Unbudging, his mother stared him down. "Not good enough," she shook her head, "out with the boy till God knows when. You know how they only have one thing on their mind." Charlie fought back a giggle at the truth of that statement. "I know, Mom. I'm really sorry. I promise it won't happen again, especially since Ryan wouldn't be going on any more dates if he could help it. But can't we talk about this in the morning?" He tried to sidle past her. Charles Matthew O'Connor, we are not done here. Uncertainty is not the lack of knowing something. It is not having an idea but being unsure. It is not having trouble making up one's mind. Uncertainty is the fundamental inability to know. Uncertainty is the trade-off of knowledge. Momentum without position, placement without direction, the very act of observing changes the thing's condition. A person cannot predict the location of an electron while also measuring its path, just the same as nobody can truly know how a given experience can shape the actions that follow. This is uncertainty. Ryan checked again, her third run-through of her closet without a trace of her new dress. She hadn't touched it since she had hung it from its delicate spaghetti straps last weekend, and yet there was no trace of the champagne gold satin slip dress to be found. She may not have known exactly where it was, but she had a good idea of which direction it went. Charlie! She padded in bare feet to the next room over and threw the door open without even a perfunctory knock. Her hunch was correct, but not in the way she expected. There on her brother's bed lay the dress, only the person who took it was nowhere to be found. Ryan gave a sharp exhale and picked up what she came for, turning just in time to bump right into her brother as he returned. "Hey, watch it," he said, "this all took forever to get right and I don't have the time to redo it." Charlie was wearing only a towel, wrapped around his chest and tucked in under his arms. He smelled like orange blossoms, his skin practically glowed from a slick coat of after-shower lotion. His hair was piled atop his head, looped around a half-dozen soda-can-sized rollers. His face was done up in dusky shadows, defined by contours and highlights, and enlivened with flirty pink lips. He brushed past his sister, who stood defiant, holding her dress up as if to make a point of showing him she knew he had taken it. "So what? The month is up and the first thing you do is raid my closet?" Ryan had gotten off easy, 1 week without devices, the punishment for participating in her and Charlie's little impersonation scheme. But on top of that, Charlie had broken curfew and lied about it. He tried to appeal to his parents' mercy, cited years of good behavior. They told him he was lucky he was only grounded for a month. While Ryan wasn't happy about her punishment, she managed the week with minimal fuss. Charlie had it much harder. School wasn't the same oasis for him that it was for his sister. Where she had dozens of friends, he only had Paul. Charlie tried to act like nothing had happened, like not being able to go to the comic shop or play games together after school was the worst part, but there was no escaping the tension between them. Neither was eager to have the talk they so desperately needed to have right there in school, and since Charlie wasn't allowed to have his phone or friends over when he was home, the two were unable to settle their whole situation. At first, Ryan thought she was going crazy. A pair of shoes not where it should have been, a skirt she could have sworn she had just washed back in the laundry, makeup left out when she knew she had put it away. It didn't take a master detective to figure out that somebody had gotten into her things, and short of a sudden haunting, it was pretty clear who that person was. Ryan got a full confession as soon as she approached her twin. No parent knows technology better than their kids, especially when that kid is an unrepentant nerd. They confiscated all of his devices but had overlooked an old Wi-Fi-enabled picture frame. For some reason that wasn't worth getting into, buried away in its circuits was a camera and rudimentary messaging app. Charlie had been using it to communicate with Paul, and as he explained to his sister, he found it easier to talk to him when he looked the way he had the night of their date. Charlie began unwinding his hair, checking each curl in his closet mirror as strand after strand fell in waves past his shoulders. "What's the big deal? It's not like I've ever seen you wear it before." Charlie dropped his towel, revealing the lacy black bra and panties he had on underneath. The bra fit him well despite the empty cups. Light padding cradled Charlie's own flesh, giving the hint of modest but naturally created cleavage. "That's because I just bought it." Ryan stamped a foot. "Girls!" Their mother's voice yelled in warning from downstairs. Ryan quieted, straining through annoyance. I know you've been looking forward to today, but Katie's party is tonight and I'm wearing this dress. The night had been long enough by the time Charlie got home after breaking curfew, and it only got longer from there. The sun had just crested the horizon, reaching with its warming grasp as the dewy night gave way to dawn when Charlie and his mother finished their talk. Every question she asked was met with one non-committal answer after another. Did he want to be a girl? No, he didn't think so, but he also didn't hate the idea. Did he want to try presenting as one, like as a trial run? Not really. He liked being anonymous, and the last thing he wanted was to give the other kids at school a reason to pay attention to him. What should she call him? Charlie was fine and, as his mother pointed out, could just as easily be short for Charlotte. He swore he just wanted space to figure it all out himself, but once Ryan let slip to their parents that Charlie had been dressing up again, mother and daughter contrived a shopping trip far enough away from home that there was no risk of running into anybody they knew. Charlie protested being dragged along, but he had been cooped up at home with nothing to do for so long at that point, an hour-long trip to some distant mall didn't sound so bad. In the end, it wasn't the dress-up montage from some movie, but they were able to talk him into picking up some new lingerie of his own and a couple outfits he just couldn't say no to. But I have the perfect look to go with it. Charlie dug into his own closet, coming back out with a black cardigan. It had been an old birthday present, the right color but dressier than his old style. It saw use for special occasions, ultimately forgotten as he grew, and it no longer had the loose fit he preferred. But that's how it would fit a boys' ensemble. Now the way the sleeves stopped at his elbow and the hem at his navel was just right to wear as cover over the low-cut dress. Charlie was struck with a flash of inspiration. How about we switch? Switch for what? Like, no offense, but ratty old jeans isn't really the vibe. Charlie put on a wicked smile. No, not switch clothes. I mean we switch, like we used to. He sat on his bed and started buckling a pair of strappy sandals to his feet, a pair that Ryan noticed had also seemed to have disappeared from her closet. I go to Katie's and you can go out with Paul. That way you can wear the dress to the party and Paul gets his real first date with the girl he thought he was asking out to begin with. Ryan gawped like a fish on land, unable to get any thought out except the one that blocked up all other words. What? The first thing their parents made clear to the twins was that the days of dressing up as one another and tricking their classmates were over, even if the deception had only ever gone one way. This, more than being grounded, was Ryan's real punishment, and after Charlie's public lip lock at Lucinda's, more boys than ever decided to try their chances with her. She did her best to avoid their advances, but when she had to fend off a different boy each period, it was all too clear she would have to learn to deal with things on her own. Like some sort of unintended exposure therapy, Ryan was getting better and better at breaking hearts. Part of why she was looking forward to Katie's party was because Victor Bueller was going to be there, and if she played her cards right and looked particularly cute. What? No, Ryan repeated, brain kicking back into gear. Charlie walked over to her, managing the 3-inch stilettos better than he had his sister's low-heeled boots a month ago. Why not? Paul's a nice guy, and he's a really good kisser. Ryan blushed. The thought of kissing anybody, let alone Paul, made her face immediately hot. No, she stammered, knock it off, Charlie. I wonder if he's better at it than Victor? Hey! A spark in her brother's eye, Charlie reached around Ryan and into his closet. No, you're right. Gold's not really my color, anyway. Hanging from his polished fingers was a long, flowing black dress. It had a ruffled flamenco skirt with blood-red accents and fell down to about mid-calf. You're not the only one that got a new dress, he said with a smirk. Charlie! Ryan yelled, fighting every fiber in her body to keep from smacking him and messing up the pretty dress as he zipped himself into it. Girls! Knock it off before I have to come up there. Geez, Ree, you're gonna get us both grounded again. Ryan was beyond words. She let out an incoherent grunt. But how about a peace offering? Take the cardigan, it really is so cute with your dress and you're going to look great tonight. Before she could respond to Charlie's offer, the clattering rattle of a distinctive broken muffler roared into the driveway. She'd have missed the panic that splashed across her brother's face for the briefest of seconds if she hadn't been watching him so closely. The self-assured facade cracked, she could see his anxiety bubbling to the surface. This wasn't pretend, Paul was here to pick Charlie up for their officially for real first date. Hey, look at me, Ryan could have taken the opportunity to return her brother's teasing. She could have exploited his vulnerability as payback, but she never could stand to see somebody hurting. Look at me, Charlie. Everything's going to go great. He's going to love you. You're so freaking awesome and cute, Charlie smiled sweetly at his sister's kind words. All you have to remember, her voice took on a stern tone, just be yourself.